All right, welcome to another episode of Comic Book Squares. We just want to remind everybody about our big contest for 2023. We're going to help find a new writer in comic books. We're partnered with Dream Foundry on this, and just remember the deadline is the end of September to get your stories in. So to kick the show off, my name's Shane.
I'm Paul.
I'm Ben.
And I'm Mike. Let's get this show started. All right. Well, welcome again to Comic Book Squares. We have with us today Jordan Hart, and I'm going to let Jordan introduce himself, talk a little bit about his project. I personally just got finished reading some of his work, and it is fantastic. So I can't wait for you all to learn a little bit more about it. So Jordan, if you're ready, go ahead and just tell us a little bit about yourself and your project.
Thank you for those kind words, Mike. Appreciate it. So, my name's Jordan. I am a comic book writer, occasional comic book colorist when needed. And I've been a lifelong, since I was 7 years old, comic book fan. I'll say that. So almost lifelong, but other than my family, comics have really been the one constant in my life, which is pretty cool. So, grew up a fan my whole life, and then, still am a fan and get to write my own as well, which is kind of the dream.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So is there any particular project that you'd like to talk about first?
Yeah, we can talk about Ripple Effects, which you just mentioned, which is my current comic, miniseries. Yes, 5 issues. It's through Fanbase Press, which is a publisher out in Los Angeles. I live in Southern California. So that started releasing in 2022, and the collected trade came out mid-November 2022. And that is a story about a young superhuman in his 20s who's invincible, but also is a type 1 diabetic. He became a diabetic shortly before he got his powers. So it's really a story about living with a chronic illness, living with an invisible illness, and that he's not sure if he can be a superhero just because of his illness and all of the anxiety and fears associated with that. And this is probably the closest to home story I've written. I usually do, horror, sci-fi. This is my first superhero book because I also have a chronic illness. I have a blood-clotting disorder that's incurable. So I was able to work in a lot of my experiences and more like the emotional side of chronic illness, and then work with one of my closest friends who's been a type 1 diabetic since he was a child to really, tell as real a story as we hope to. So, you read it. It's still a superhero book. There's lots of fun. There's lots of powers, lots of action in it, but really tried to focus on the character side of things as well.
Well, great. Well, I tell you, I did read it recently. I finished it up recently. Again, 5 issues, fantastic. I love the personal, the emotional. As a kid, and a lot of people that watch our show, of course, have that connection of, oh my gosh, some of the stories that I've read growing up and through the childhood, just all of those emotional, there's certain ones that kind of definitely ring true to you a little bit more. And so, that emotional part, like you said, I think it's a superhero story. There's definitely a lot of turmoil and things that affect us every day with our positivity, sometimes some negativity. And so all those things that hit you in the feels, right? It's like, oh my gosh, how am I going to deal with this? So I guess then noting that you have had and continue to deal with kind of a personal challenge. I'll call it a challenge because it certainly can help shape you and in some cases drive you into things. Like, did you ever feel that you were going to be kind of writing in this genre, or did you, like you talked about horror, like is that your go-to, or did this kind of push you into some of those more uncharted waters?
Correct. Yes. So I grew up with superhero stories, but just as a writer, more supernatural horror and sci-fi is my wheelhouse. What I love. So yeah, to answer your question, this totally felt like the one character, the one story that called for the superhero genre. It's something that I grew up with, so I love it. I know a lot of the tropes, a lot of the moments. So it was probably the easiest thing I've written from a genre standpoint, right? From pouring my experiences, personal experience into this story, that was probably the most difficult. So it was really this yin and yang, right? Where it was, my beloved genre that I'm familiar with writing about, a little bit more personal stuff, which they always say, write what you know. I try to not do that. I try to learn about like different people and characters and personalities and write, because that's what I find fun. So this was definitely write what you know. And
Sure.
yeah, it just felt, superheroes, I know that. So yeah, it felt like the right time to jump into that medium.
Yeah, for sure. Did you find yourself again because of some personal experiences? Like, do you usually, and in this case particularly, do you bounce ideas off of anyone? Like, do you have like a support team of folks that you say, "Hey, did I kind of overshare, or do you feel this is the right mix of this and that?" Like, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, the first wall of defense is always my wife, right? She knows me better than anyone. We started dating, in college. So we have been partners for quite some time. So she's always the first bounce test. And then, from there, when it went to fan base press and, it was just a story treatment that I had pitched them originally. So then when I got into scripting, I worked with Barbara and Bryant Dillon, who they do everything there: president, publishers, editors, and they worked as my editorial side, and they were phenomenal. They were great. And then, of course, for the diabetes side of it, my friend Perry, who's been a type 1 diabetic, he was like, we credit him as diabetes consultant, because that's what he truly was. We were able to, from what type of medicine it would be to what side effect it was to the color of the specific chewable that, George would take. We worked with Perry to like try and hit that. So yeah, Ripple Effects is definitely the sum of many parts and many great ideas and different people. And that's why it's so special to me.
No, absolutely. It is a fantastic, fantastic package of all, like we talked about, the superhero and the personal side, and it reminded me actually a little bit more extreme level, but kind of like what I think a lot of people liked about Spider-Man, because Spider-Man seemed to be one of the first heroes that had kind of quote unquote real life problems. You didn't have a Superman or a Wonder Woman that had these superpowers. You had someone that, yeah, had some powers, but they still had so many challenges and so many, personal hurdles that they maybe were trying to go over. So I think this is a beautiful, beautiful story about that. And so, I mean, did you kind of like have anything as a reference point when you were kind of trying to tell the story, or was it just totally all you and just this is what I'm doing, this is where I'm going?
Oh, you totally nailed it with Spider-Man. He's my favorite singular superhero for all the reasons you mentioned. Like it felt like truly a real person with the real struggles. Where George struggles with being a superhero because of his illness. Peter struggled, right, because of balancing school and taking care of Aunt May and like getting into college, right, and like all of that stuff, right? So it's like with great power comes great responsibility is just the greatest character mantra you can have. So that's definitely what I aimed towards. And then what pulled me into comics as a kid was X-Men #1 by Jim Lee. So like that was, it was 92. I was at the grocery store and I saw it was the Wolverine Cyclops Iceman cover. And I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I told my mom, I was like, put the food back for the week, get me the comic. This is all I want. And of course, being a great mother, she's like, I can't do that, but I will, I can get you this comic. So, there's a lot of like the X-Men team dynamic that's into ripple effects, right? So those were my true benchmarks that I wanted to hit. Like I wanted George to be like Peter Parker, but I wanted him to have a support team of other heroes just like the X-Men. So I tried to meld both of those together.
Man, now that you say that, that is amazing. I love that, because now that you talk about that, I in reading the story and seeing some of, you in some cases, maybe everything just meshes just perfectly. But I think like something that was held true by X-Men and what you have in Ripple Effects is that, it's not always a smooth conversation, or it's not always everyone's perfectly in sync or meshed up, where you have these sometimes conflicting attitudes or mindsets. And now that you say that, oh my gosh, that is so, I can totally see that in your, oh my gosh.
And even not to spoil anything, but the villain, as the story starts, uppercut, right? One of the villains, like he's completely Magneto, who for me has always been the most fascinating mutant, because he could be a good guy or a bad guy depending on really what's happening, right? Like it's like,
right.
What he's doing is wrong, but I get why he's doing it. You know what I mean? And that is definitely the what I strive for with the character Uppercut. It's like he's breaking the law, he's doing bad things, but like you kind of get why he's doing it. So yeah, that played a big part too.
Yes, for sure. There were times, again, as you're progressing the story, where you can say, well, it may not be right, but it's not really wrong either. Like you could see yourself kind of on the fence a little bit, like, ooh, that is a little bit of a conundrum, isn't it?
Totally.
So that's awesome. So it sounds like this project was fascinating for you, because again, you talked about kind of writing about what but I imagine there was, as you said with your friend, like I imagine a lot of things that you learned along the way about diabetes, about certain medical challenges and different things. I would imagine that was probably a pretty good learning moment for you as well.
Correct. Yeah. Learned a ton. And even after Ripple Effects came out, learned how many people in my life, from work colleagues to, acquaintances, are type 1 diabetic. And I'd known them for years and had no idea, and it was just like the real world, the interpersonal learning of that was pretty great. And, and then to hear that I didn't completely mess it up, and it was believable, the story. I was like, yes, great. That's all I care about. So that was great. That was like my first thought, like, oh, I'm diabetic. I'm like, this is crazy. Hopefully I was respectful and accurate. So that's been going good.
Yeah. So then the team, was there anyone new? I guess because you have had a lot of other successful projects along the way. Was this were there some new folks that kind of came into your support group, as far as different artists that maybe you hadn't worked with before, or other creators that maybe you hadn't worked with before?
Correct. Yeah. This team was great. I think this is the biggest team I've ever worked with. Writing indie comics, you try to save every penny you can, right? So like, my background is graphic design. So I'm usually able to color, letter, and do all the production and graphic design needed. But working with Fanbase, they had such a great, and I actually did the covers on my other two too, as well. Just, it was fun, but whatever I could do, right, to save cash. Where this Fanbase had such a great, just like bullpen, I would call it, of people that, we were able to get one of my best friends, Jordan Hart, to do the covers, which like I knew he has such a great style and it's so bright that I was so excited about that. This was my first time ever working with Bruno, who's in South America. He's the penciler and inker of Ripple Effects, and he did a phenomenal job. And it's like we've still never met in person, and it's
gosh,
yeah, it's unbelievable how great of a job he did. And then we for the first time I had a letterer, Oyano Radsford, who's works with Fanbase a lot, and lettering is really like the offensive lineman of comics. You only notice it when it's something's wrong or it's bad.
Good.
Yeah, it's like that's the only time you notice lettering. So That's what I always laugh about, so he's a phenomenal letterer. I was actually most excited to have a letterer because he did a phenomenal job. And then Shane Kadlicek helped me a ton flatting the colors, which also was, so I still colored this book, but we were really able to divide and conquer, where he would flat the page and then I could do the effects and update the palettes. And yeah, it was just a really awesome team to work with, for sure.
Well, and I was going to mention that you touched on it actually before I was able to bring the question, but you nailed it when you said, you notice it when things aren't right or something's out of sync, whether it's the lettering or some of the colors or just the overall style doesn't flow. And I think that's what's amazing about your project is that you don't have those distractors. Like, you're not paying attention to, oh, this lettering, this is like not good, or this doesn't work with this. Like, I never once thought that in any of the issues. It was just the story was so captivating and everything supporting that just came together beautifully. So
great.
I never once ever had, like you said, sometimes you will definitely, your eye gets drawn, or we've done other discussions with creators or artists that maybe they had someone that was part of their support team. Unfortunately, it just didn't flow very well, and so you kind of get drawn out of that space. And this was beautiful. I mean, everyone did such a fantastic job.
Thank you.
So I have to ask: is there more to come? Like, do we get to see more of these characters?
I hope so. I think everyone would really, really love that. So, we know the door's open. Now it's just, we all have to, align workload and schedule wise. But yes, this will not be the last of the characters you see. So I think it's
awesome.
Too fun. It's too great of a world. So yeah, they will be back. I don't know when, sooner than later, but yes, they will be around for sure.
All right. Awesome. I can't wait. I hope it's sooner rather than later. So let me ask you this. A lot of times, the folks that watch the show or listen to the podcast, a lot of them are very, very, in different stages, I guess I would say, of their, creativity and their passion. Some of them are just starting. Some have been going at it for a while. But for you, what we try to do is why we're here is just to help promote, the folks that don't have these ginormous sounding boards or audiences. It's not a Marvel or DC that has all this money to throw at something, right? It's all of you, like you said, your creations and your passion. You still have to budget, and you still have to try to save where you can to bring it, to bring it to life. So I guess with that, is there, like, with this project, did you have like the story completely laid out? Did you know how many issues it was going to go? Can you talk just a little bit about that creative space a little bit? Yeah,
for sure. I'm going to hit the light real quick. Just, it's getting a little dark.
Oh yeah.
Sorry. There we go.
No,
get some light in here. Jeez. It got dark quick. Yeah. So, basically, I had it originally as 8 issues. So it was pretty long. There was more George with his parents, there was more of that dynamic. There was more with Salvadora and Uppercut, younger, more like more of that. And then ultimately, it's just, we ran into workload. If you have a ton of issues, then the trade becomes much more expensive, and it's like, we really wanted to hit a certain number on the trade for conventions. Cause that's really, if you have an indie book, that's really where you're going to hit your audience. We're going to hit consumers. And, we all know cons are glorious with tons of options. So you don't want to price yourself out from someone that could get it. So so we were able to whittle it down to 5 supersized issues. I would say if you look at the page count, it would be 6. Like, if this was a traditional Marvel or DC book at 20 to 22 pages, it would be 6 issues. So there was a little bit of trimming story wise, but we were able to get all the important stuff in there. So, it was stuff that enriched the character, but, cutting it didn't take away from the story. So yeah, that was tough, like not, we'll get there one day. That's what I thought, I was like, oh, they could always have a flashback or something like that. So we'll do that.
Yeah, for sure. I love it. So then are you, cause I know you've had some other projects I think that you've talked about, like you just mentioned hitting, the convention circuit a little bit and things like that. So is that, I guess we've had different folks on that talk about that. In some cases, they're in a location where, conventions aren't necessarily, a great avenue for them, or they're only around once a year or something like that. And I mean, you said you're in California, so hopefully there are a few opportunities for you to, like, have you found, I imagine that it's different levels of quote unquote success at conventions, because what you just mentioned, there's so many options. But I mean, would you recommend that to folks that have that option at their disposal to go that route?
Yeah, for sure. If you have the opportunity to, have a con that has an artist alley or a small press that you could go in, it's really, really great. And, I mean, everyone's different, but for me, the convention circuit, if you will, in Southern California is really how I got to where I am, like it's where you meet everyone. It's like you start, getting to know everyone. LA County is, I think, like 11 million people, right? But like the LA comic scene is a very tight knit group, and it's like once you know a few people, you kind of realize everyone knows everyone, and it's generally everyone wants to help everyone, which is really great too. So
That's awesome.
How I got to Fanbase Press was that through my first book, Terminarch, the editor on that was friends with Barbara and Bryant, knew them, just from the LA comic community, and introduced me to them to be on their podcast for that book. And, just you see them at every con, you talk to them, you say hi, and you just become friends. So, it's different for everyone, but for me as a writer too, I find the hardest thing is finding an artist. This is a visual medium. This is all about the art. So when you're a writer that doesn't draw, you're completely dependent on another creative person, to work with, to collaborate with. So going to conventions and hitting Artist Alley, even if you don't have a table or you don't have a book. That's how I found all of my artists before Ripple Effects. That's how I found my first publisher, and like I said, got the fan base. So yeah, cons are, if you want to do indie books, going to a decent sized convention for me was very, very beneficial to get that moving, for sure.
Yeah, I think talking to other creators, I think a lot of times, it's kind of being in the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
A lot of them have talked about, just being able to deal with some rejection, or in some cases, a lot of rejection, depending upon the timing, and just, hanging in there. And it sounds like it's been a passion of yours for a long time. And really, that's what keeps you going. I think it's just that genuine passion for these types of projects. So, it's amazing to me to hear some of the stories of folks and how they've been able to just have some of that luck, like you said, meeting the right people at convention. There's so many people there.
Yeah.
I mean, literally tens and thousands of people, and sometimes just crossing the right path.
Yeah, totally. And it's hard to put yourself out there, even just talking to people, but it's really what you got to do. And what I realize is that like people want to help. Like if I'm at the fan base table and you come up and say, I have some questions about like start writing my own comic or finding an artist, I'm going to sit there and talk to you like about it, because like that, I was in that position years ago, and I, whatever I can do to help, I'm going to do. And I feel like that's really the community in any city at any con is, for the most part, everyone wants to help each other, which I just think is so cool, because at the end of the day, we're all fans. You don't really make comics if you weren't a fan, if you're not a fan. So yeah, just like yeah, staying positive, and like you said about the grind and about the rejection, it's hard. I mean, people, it's much easier for someone to say no than yes. So they're just, a lot of, they're going to say no. But, what helped me is that Todd McFarlane, growing up in the 80s and loving comics, right? He's one of the greatest artists of all time. I think he said he has over 500 rejection letters. And I mean, that's Todd McFarlane, one of the greatest comic book artists ever. So it's like, it is something, Greg Capullo says the same thing, going through hundreds of rejections. And it's like, comics are, everyone loves them, but, very few people can, there's just very few openings for it. So you got to just grind, and it's just, don't get discouraged. Todd McFarlane and Capullo did it. Everyone has to do it. So, and the people that don't grind, I found that just get in because of a friend or they knew someone, they don't last, so it's like, don't get discouraged by that either. They don't last.
Right.
Yeah. They move on. They just, if the love's not there, you move on. So.
Yeah, you bring up a great point. I in fact was fortunate enough to meet Mr. McFarlane a few times, and I've heard him personally tell that story about the rejection, and I think he's exactly echoing the words, and you're echoing his words, where it's just exactly that. Just keep keep the passion alive, keep doing it. At some point, hopefully you get to a level of, again, success is different for different people, but even if it just makes you happy that, you're getting your work, your publication, your art, your writing, your creativity out there, it's, again, it helps so many folks to see, just that shared community, and like you said, that giving community. So let me ask you this with ripple effects, because there is a personal side to this. Do you find that dealing with what you're talking about at the conventions, that possible rejection, like, do you feel like this side or this particular project, it's more difficult for you to kind of put yourself out there at the con, or do you feel like it's about the same experience of what you've dealt with in the past?
Yeah, I feel like this one is the easiest of all, because it's a story that to me, just is more impactful than my typical horror sci-fi, like that's just telling a good story, which is what I love. But like for this, having so many, diabetics come to the fan base tables and booths and buy ripple effects and share their story, and like how they've waited years for a diabetic superhero, like all of this stuff. It's like, it makes it, I mean, that's the greatest feeling in the world, So yeah, this one's been easy, thankfully. Yeah.
Yeah. I can only imagine, once again, seeing faces, especially of younger folks or children that have it, that are able to have a superhero story about someone that's like them. I can't imagine. That's got to bring so much joy and happiness to you. So again, kudos to you for taking that jump and that risk on yourself and bringing your story out. So with that being said, are we perhaps going to see any more stories of this kind of genre? It sounds like, two-part question. Are we going to see any more of this type of genre? And then, or are you going back to sci-fi next, or horror next, or what's on deck?
Okay, yeah. So yes, you will see more of this. Not immediately next, but yes, there will be. It was just it was very fun to write, and like I said, I loved my team, and it's just my wheelhouse, superheroes. So yeah, I will be going back there for sure. But for my next title, it was just announced at WonderCon a few weeks ago that this I am co-writing, so co-created co-writing. So coming at it 50-50, which has been really nice from the writing standpoint. I'm going back to horror, but in an adventure type way. So a horror, we described it as Constantine meets Clarissa Explains It All. But less possessions and more Raiders of the Lost Ark type adventure quests. So yeah, that will
Wow,
be.
I think I just got goosebumps a
Oh,
little bit.
cool,
Holy cow, that
cool.
sounds really cool.
Yeah, thank you. So that will be a little bit more. It PG-13 horror, so not like not R-rated horror, but more supernatural type horror adventure set in 1991. So
Ah,
it'll be probably humor wise the most fun I've had, and my co-writer and co-creator David Ebeltoft is just a great writer. He's very funny, and I feel like he brings out the humor in me and vice versa. So we've been having a blast with it. So yes, that will be next up.
awesome, awesome. So it sounds so again, I got goosebumps because it just sounds like awesome, just even conceptually, not even knowing anything at all other
Yeah,
than that. But how do you come up with like I guess in asking that question, like kind of what's on deck or what's coming up next, do you have like a book of notes or stories? Like, do you have all this stuff kind of on deck, or you just kind of let it come to you as it comes, or like how do you work in that space?
both. So yeah, so both. So I have so ripple effects was an idea I had originally in 2011, and it was published in 2022. So that was something I had the nugget of it, and then over time I slowly developed it. Terminarch, my first comic. This is a great story. You'll like this. I pitched like a historical action fiction, and the publisher was like, really cool idea, but we're looking for sci-fi right now. Do you have any sci-fi? And the idea for Terminarch was an idea I had in high school before I even knew how to write. And that was real quickly, it was the robots become self-aware, but instead of killing all humans, they save human artists because they can't understand art and they don't understand it. So they need
Awesome.
to, yeah. Which today, I don't know, they kind of seem like they do understand art, which is terrifying. But yeah, so like I just
Yes.
pulled that out after like 15 years. I was like, okay, here's an idea. So yeah, the ideas come. I have a huge document of just ideas. Some of it could be like a paragraph. Other things could be like make no sense if you didn't know it. It was like, this is an example, like a hammer is self-aware and I don't know. You know what I mean? Like becomes best friends with a bubblegum wrapper. I don't know. I just made that up. But like if you saw that as a bullet point, you'd be like, what is going on? But yeah, yeah. So they come and go. They come and go. The cabinet was that's the next book. The cabinet, the title of it, that derived from seeing an actual cabinet at an art museum, the Getty Center in L.A. And being like, wow, this is something cool. This looks really creepy and haunted. And then I sent it to David, my co-writer, because we were trying to work on a comic together, and we were kicking ideas back and forth. And he really responded to that as well, the visual. And my original thought was, well, is this more like a Conjuring thing? Like where it's like it's this old display cabinet from the 1600s that's haunted or holding a ghost or something. And then he's like, or is it like an adventure, Raiders of the Lost Ark, and like it holds relics and they got to put stuff in it. I'm like, yeah, let's do that.
Mm,
So
nice,
so
nice.
yeah, yeah, this is a really long-winded answer. I guess to say is that the ideas come very often. For me personally, the challenge is always which one to invest my time, effort, and finances into. Right? That especially
Right.
comics, it's going to take a year to make. So that's really the trick for me is where to put my efforts and attention.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, great. Well, I know we're probably coming up on time here. So, would you like to let everyone know where they can find all of your wonderful, wonderful projects?
Yeah, so I'm only on Instagram these days for social media, but you can keep track of me and all of the cons I'll be at and upcoming stuff as well. And that's Instagram. My handle is Jordy Jordith. So you'll find me on there. And if you can't, go to the Fanbase Press Instagram account, and they tag me all the time. So you'll be able to track back through there.
Awesome. Fantastic. And I know we'll have all of the links, anything that you want to send us, Jordan, we'll include in the notes, and we'll get it on the podcast. We'll get it everywhere and help spread the word. So
Great.
it has been fantastic speaking with you. I again appreciate everything that you're doing, not only for telling your story, but again, telling a lot, as we've found out again, there's so many folks that we don't know that are all around us all the time, friends and family sometimes even, that we don't know, what they're dealing with, and those invisible challenges that you speak of. And so thank you on behalf of that entire audience. I think it's a fantastic project. I loved it. It was fantastic. I highly recommend it. Go out and grab it, to all of you listening. So thank you again, Jordan. It's been great. And, keep pumping out the fantastic work. We love it.
Will do. Thank you so much for having me. This was great. Thank you.